Antonio Conte. I'll read a little quote, but I won't attempt to do the accent. But the accent and his anger, it bore all the hallmarks of a classic fan cam, where he got increasingly irate the more he spoke. But he said, 22 years, there is the owner, and they never win anything. There was something, but why? The fault is only for the club or for every manager that stay here. You're finding an alibi, another alibi. You try to find an excuse for the players. Okay, continue to do this to find an excuse for the players. You do only this. You do only this. Excuse for the players. But the players may be my future. Then we lost confidence. They lost spirit. They lost being a team. Excuses. Try to protect them every time. So it's a 10-minute post-match press conference. He was asked after his initial almost borderline unprompted chat about his future, because I've heard this a lot when speaking to Flav about this. If he's not got his contract's up at the end of the season, isn't it? They're saying him having doubt over his future is having an impact on Spurs, because he's not committing his long-term future. So why would anyone commit their long-term future? Is that destabilising it? So he was basically asked, well, what about your future? And he's like, yeah, my future, but does that you're blaming me for the lack of fire? And he talked about fire in their eyes and fire in their bellies and their hearts and all that kind of stuff. It's huge, Chris. For someone to come out so publicly and use basically that entire 10 minutes to slaughter the players and basically say none of them are up for the fight, and it's this football club because they've not won anything for 20 years, and everyone makes excuses for the players. They don't like pressure. They don't like pressure at this football club. It was.
We were sort of saying that they're at the right place because they never get into any pressure situations because they're out of it too late or too early and stuff, aren't they? I can understand what he's saying. The problem is, I don't think he's the person to say it for Tottenham, because he's not one of those guys who stays in it for the long haul and tries to turn things round. He's a 3-year manager cycle man, and then he moves on to something else that might be a bit easier, where he can maybe win a trophy, and he'll continue to do that. So I agree with everything that he said. I think what he said about Tottenham is actually quite eye-opening, and it's nice to see a manager being honest about what he thinks is the problems at the football club, because what he's saying is, look, there's loads of boss managers who've come and worked here, but we've all faced the same challenges, and the ownership are essentially covering up for the players and everything else. So it's not just the manager time and time again. It's a bigger problem maybe with the owners, and it's filtering down to the players and stuff, but he's the wrong man to say it.
Is he?
I think so.
Anyone else?
Well, he's not committed his future.
Someone had to say it, didn't they? And they tried Mourinho. It always felt like a marriage made in hell to me, Conte going there. Because like you say, he's a short-term man who likes to spend a lot of money and they win trophies and on he goes. And Mourinho was very similar in that sense. And I don't know, I feel like we've all been thinking it and kind of saying it amongst ourselves and on social media for a long time about Spurs and being that club that just never quite happens for, and when the pressure does come on, they crumble. Someone had to say it. I don't see why it wasn't Conte. I think he was fine to say it, and I think it's always his profession to see a manager being so open. It really was. It is. He wants to get the sack. He wants his payoff before the end of his contract. I don't think any doubt about that. But yeah, I didn't mind it at all. I quite enjoyed it.
I loved it, to be honest, because it's brutally honest, and the players get away with far too much. I mean, to use Liverpool, I mean, Alisson Becker once again coming out and talking about the attitude of people when you're 3/4 into a season. I like that managers came out and basically turned around. The problem is that he's basically put absolutely no blame on himself. Some sort of blame has got to be on you. Like you're the
Alisson
manager,
could do that, by the way,
course,
because he has been brilliant.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
exactly. Yeah. But I like how he's done it, because it is true. You were 3-1 up against Southampton with 15 to go. Southampton are in a relegation zone, odds on to go down. You're in a top 4 race, and they just collapsed, and they collapsed quickly. And his tactics, he can say, got them to a 3-1 lead. And there you need to deal with your focus, your concentration. And we've all said it with that group of players, with that club. The problem is that he mentions the history of the club, and he is their manager, so it looks horrific from everyone else inside the club, but from an outside perspective, it is boss to see him just be brutally honest.
It feels like a Hail Mary from him, though, of like, well, I'm either going to... he's not going to stay in the job, and he's got nothing to lose by saying it as well, and someone does need to actually call it out sometimes, if they want, because he's saying, you kind of want to be a club that competes at the top. You say the words, but you're not living it, and it's actually not the worst thing that can happen. Is some home truths, but the platform for it. I'd rather him say it than a player say it. Like if a player come out and said that, like that would be. I'd be really annoyed, and like I don't like Liverpool players coming out and saying the attitude's wrong because I'm like, you're one of the fucking players. You know what I mean? It's all right when Alisson's doing it when you're right. No one can question his attitude. The manager does it. There's not really another person who can come out because
it'd be Kane, wouldn't it?
I think Kane should have been the person to do it. To be honest with you,
Kane's a fucking loser. That's the thing.
But exactly, that's the whole point, and he's unfortunately part of the problem for them. But like. He's got enough stock in Tottenham Hotspur and he's tried hard enough for long enough that I think it makes a difference. I don't think Antonio Conte firing shots as he's leaving through the door is going to make a blind bit of difference if that is what he wanted. If he wanted Spurs to be a football club that goes and challenges and stops doing that, him doing it ain't going to change anything. Harry Kane doing it might.
The other thing is that Conte knows that that's not going to affect his future. People will want him or whether or not he's exploded like that because
he's protecting himself.
Exactly, he's got the caliber, he's got the trophies, he's got his portfolio to say. This is what I can bring to you. Yeah, at Spurs, I was brought into a team that was crap. To be fair, you went and spent 50 million on Richarlison. That's your fault. Like, you can't blame anyone else for that, to be honest.
But you're looking for that fire in the eyes and you went and bought Richarlison from Everton.
Tears in his eyes.
Yeah. But, like, he's done it to... I reckon he's just... I reckon because he's such a serial winner, he's come into... His mentality is different and he's overdone it. His blood is boiled. He's had enough. He wants to get out.
He said, I'm not used to this. I'm not... like 6th, 7th, 8th in the league. Yeah. This is not a situation I'm used to. And it does boil down to, and again, and why I think he's not overt when he nails the ownership, but apparently he has been told to, like, he had to go and clarify what he meant to them and what have you. It feels a bit familiar because when Conte came in, I heard a lot of Spurs fans saying, well, they'll have to back him because Conte, and he won't have agreed to join that unless he's been told he's getting the financial backing. And the question is, if he feels that he hasn't, have they told him that he's going to get it? And they've reneged on that, so he's a bit fucking pissed off. And he's not the kind of guy who's just going to go, well, like, he's not a pragmatist like Jurgen Klopp. He'll just go, it's fine, I'll just work with what I work with. I like it here. I'll do this. He will spit his dummy out and let the world know that he was, that it's other people's issues. But it does go back to, it's like, what did he expect?
Yeah.
Did he expect Tottenham to all of a sudden be a club that spends ridiculous money and spends massive wages and all that kind of stuff? Because that's a bit mad to think that all of a sudden they're going to change to be that. And that again goes back to the point. Tottenham are just a club who will forever finish between, if they're on a good season, they might finish third if they get a good couple of years behind them. But by and large, they're a 3rd to 8th team in the Premier League. They've got the stadium, they've got some good players, but they haven't got...
If they weren't in London, they wouldn't be a thing.
No. Yeah. They want a certain brand and type of football as well, don't they, Spurs fans? They like playing attractive. It stems back to when they had Gascoigne and people, or dealers before that. They want a certain type, and they haven't got that now with Mourinho. They had it with Poch, obviously. They
just want to finish above Arsenal. That's all Spurs want is to finish above Arsenal.
But with Conte, you're right, he's either been promised stuff that hasn't happened, they've gone back on that, or he didn't do his due diligence on Spurs, which doesn't seem feasible to me, because he's clearly an intelligent man. He's been around the game for a long time. Chloe's right on the point of him being a serial winner who's got this back catalogue of success. He's going to get another job. What he said harms him none. Doesn't matter at all. A team will give him another gig, just like they have done with Mourinho. If that was a young manager, if it was Potter, for instance, at Chelsea coming out and saying all that stuff, clubs would look at him differently and go, how can you say that? Conte, doesn't matter at all.
Yeah, it's clever in his regard, because if he wants to stay, it feels like that was his last card he had to play.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's not going to sit there and accept it just being more of what that is. He clearly protected his brand a little bit by saying it's not entirely all on him, which is a smart thing to do. But if Tottenham want to be something else, eventually someone had to say it, and not in a snide way, because everyone who talks about it is all people from outside. It's all Spursy this and Spursy that. It's Chelsea related and Arsenal related, and everyone have a good old laugh at Tottenham Hotspur. But funny, it goes back to I've known him for so many years. He, a diehard Tottenham fan, absolutely loves the club to bits, but he hates them being good. because it comes with the pressure. When you're just average, you enjoy the wins more because there's, because it comes out of nowhere. You're more surprised and you get more joy out of it. There's loads of pressure, and they, again, as a fan base, they're not built for it. They don't have the culture for it. They haven't got the history for it. So they need to change. But there's probably a real problem there where it's like how you can criticise your brother or sister, but no one else can. And him coming out and slagging the football club, it'd be interesting to see how their fans treat that, because what he said is absolutely right, and it needed to be said, and it might actually give them the kick up the arse, top to bottom.
Yeah.
But what they'll probably do is be so put off by what they've heard that they'll fuck him off. And they'll just go back to being what they've always been.
I thought that would have happened by now, though. I thought
You
as
got
soon
2
as
weeks.
those comments would have came out, it'd have been get them out as soon as possible. The thing that...
Yeah, but they cost themselves a League Cup by putting fucking, what's his face in? Ryan,
Not Harry Winks, Ryan Mason.
Ryan Mason in instead of, Jose
Keeping
Mourinho.
the
The only other possible thing I could think in a way it might help them is that you've just heard that Patrick Vieira, loads of people in that dressing room said he doesn't motivate us. Well, Conte has probably tried pretty much everything, and now he's said, right, I'm calling you all out, and you've all got to then prove it, because no matter what, when he leaves, you've still got to prove that. Antonio Conte, who's one of the prestigious managers in football, has just called every single one of you out. Even when he leaves, you've still got to prove that that's not your mentality, because watch, when you exit the League Cup next season and end up with 0 trophies, that quote's going to be plastered everywhere again for you to see. Yeah. So maybe it might be a case of, if he does somehow stay, he's worded it and he's used it and he's saying, use that as motivation, go and prove yourselves. And he'll probably turn around in 10 years' time if they've won one league trophy and say, yeah, that was because of me. That was because I turned around and said
the timing of it's brilliant in that regard, if that's right as well, because he's not going to see them. So he needed to get something out that hit each of them wherever they were. And there's no way that the players' WhatsApp's going off big time. Yeah. Have you seen what this tit has said about us? Like, you know what I mean? He's been off sick for fucking 6 weeks. He comes back and says this. You fucking knobhead.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit like the thing of, like, you step away from work and you get to, he's watched it from the outside and gone, got all this like watching the match from the stands. I go, what the fuck are they doing? I've not seen it from this perspective before. He's had like a real life
shit
moment. He's
houses.
gone, oh God, it looked a lot better from ground level. This, I've just stepped back. Jesus fucking.
Was it the beginning of this season, or was it last season, where he kind of went off the rails and he was asked about his future, and he was like, to be honest, I don't know whether I'll be here next week. Yeah. He like said something where he was like, I don't think I want to do this anymore.
Was that the back end of last season? Was that all it was?
I think it was last year. He played Burnley and he came out and said something very similar.
Yeah, and it was like it sounded
like
it
was windy where he was. He was on the corner of the pitch or something, losing his shit,
and
wasn't he?
He said in the press that he was like, I just don't know whether I want to do this anymore.
He's always been a bit hostile, though, hasn't he? Like that.
A bit.
He's an aggressive little man, isn't he?
He's glorious.